What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined every Friday by my main man, Derek Bell. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Today, we got a great show for you. Alex Highsmith trade talks have hit the market. Are they real? Is there anything that would force the Pittsburgh Steelers to consider a trade of their outside linebacker? We got a bold prediction for the wide receivers we got to dig into. And obviously there is a former first-round linebacker who has made waves across the Pittsburgh Steelers news path this week. It's a cloudy, but it's a good day here in the Burgh. It's been a good week here in the Burgh. How you feeling, my friend?
Feeling good, man. Friday, ending the week on a high note. Talk some Steelers football. I'm excited about that. I had a pretty productive week. I'm excited to finish it off here on the pod. So it's always nice, when you have those weeks where you get everything you want to get done, and that's kind of how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling, accomplished. So, ready for the weekend.
Love it. Let me guess, that accomplishment included running insane amounts of miles.
Well, the gym, yeah, that was a good one. I still got to knock that out today, so I'm not fully accomplished yet. But yeah, just in general, I had a list of pieces and videos and stuff that I wanted to crank out, and I was able to get all of those done. So anytime I can do that, I feel pretty good. So
beautiful, gotta love it. Yeah, I was on the phone with Donnie Droon yesterday, 2 days ago. And before he got off, he's like, dude, have you been paying attention to Derek? And I'm like, no. He's like, I'm going to the gym right now because this dude just runs like 40 miles a day. I'm like, this is why we're not friends on the app. It can't happen. You push me too much. Appreciate you. I'm loving that you're having a productive week. There's plenty of Pittsburgh Steelers to talk about. I guess we'll start with Your Report recently put out a list of 3 Steelers they believe are top targets or trade candidates, I would say, heading into training camp. That list included Zach Gentry, Kevin Dotson, and Alex Highsmith. The fourth-year linebacker is coming off 14.5 sacks in the league and forced fumbles with 5. Do you look at him and at any moment, have you thought Alex Highsmith is on the trading block and this is a possibility? Or is this just kind of, spitballing, shooting into the dark, hoping that you catch something?
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where you get a good player on the last year of his contract and everybody says, oh, well, they don't want to pay him. They can't pay him. They got to trade him. So I'm not saying the Steelers just hang up the phone before like an offer even gets, put out into the air. But I would be really surprised if they seriously consider trading Alex Highsmith. I mean, I think 2023, we've talked about this a couple times, but, 2021 was kind of a transition. You got your transition and rebuild years in the last 2 years for the Steelers, getting a rookie quarterback in there, Ben retiring. But I think 2023, they're definitely trying to win. Like they're trying to make the playoffs. The Steelers are a lot better team with Alex Highsmith in the fold. So I just don't see them trading him. Even if contract negotiations go south, say that they aren't able to, work out a long-term deal before the regular season starts, I still think Highsmith is going to play. He's going to play out the final year of his contract. And then once that happens, we'll revisit what happens in the offseason next year, whether that's the franchise tag, whether, he actually hits free agency, the open market. I just really don't see a scenario where, Highsmith is seriously, definitely not being shopped, but probably still not even accepting offers for real. So,
yeah, I agree. I think, don't get me wrong, Omar Khan would answer the phone for everybody and talk about a trade possibility with every single person. But he's made it very clear that, cutthroat sort of guy, in and out of conversations. This is what I'm offering. Is it a good deal? No. Can we work? No. Okay, let's move on. Unless somebody's calling and they're like, hey, we're going to give you 2 first-round picks for Alex Highsmith or this or that, I doubt Omar Khan's letting that conversation last more than 10 seconds to 30 seconds. He's going to move on. Alex Highsmith is a piece, like at this point, he's not Bud Dupree. I think that's the conversation that people want to try to have here, those that would trade him. I don't think that there's many out there that would. I don't think that the Steelers fan base is sitting around going, Alex Highsmith, we should probably get rid of this guy. You look at him, he's not a Bud Dupree. He's already developed. He's already the player that you want him to be opposite of TJ Watt. There's no question marks left. It's just a matter of, can you sign this guy to a reasonable deal, which I guess that's where the conversation goes next. You look at him right now, first off, do you expect the deal to get done before training camp? And what do you think? I mean, we've talked about the number before being 14, 15 million. What do you think is the park minimum? What do you think that, if the Steelers look at this and say, because that was part of the conversation when it came to Bleacher Report, was the Steelers are already $6.5 million over the cap next season. You look at Alex Highsmith's deal. Do you think that there's something in there that, you'd say maybe he does take a team-friendly deal and this is the price for it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, it's awesome because I literally just dropped an Alex Highsmith video on my channel earlier
Nice.
today. So I've already done the video. I've already done the research on this. So, yeah, I've talked about this at length, but I really think that the $15 million range is probably that's probably the hometown discount, in my opinion, of what could potentially get it done. Anything less than that, man, you're getting into the John Franklin Myers type of category. 15 million is also where like Hassan Reddick's deal is that he signed with Philly a little while ago. So, but those guys are designated pass rushers. Alex Highsmith plays every snap. So there's a little bit difference in the value, in my opinion, between those type of players. 15 million, I think, is probably the cheapest that they're going to be able to get him for. I know some people have floated out like 12 to 15. I would be kind of surprised about that. If you look at the other edge rushers that are around the same age, heading into, what we consider the prime of his career, I'd be surprised if it came in earlier, but I do think, it's really a matter of what Highsmith wants to do, right? Does he want to try to cash out? This is his best opportunity to do so, or does he value, maybe taking a little bit less money to stay in Pittsburgh? Because, Harold Landry for the Titans, got $17.5 million before last season. Landry and Highsmith are probably pretty comparable rushers. Landry gets a lot of his production off some of the games that they run in Tennessee up front. Highsmith's more of a one-on-one guy. And then really, like, I look at it in terms of if he really, really wants to cash out. Bradley Chubb, the Dolphins traded, all that draft capital to get Chubb last season. They gave him a deal that's $110 million, $22 million per season. If you look at the numbers side by side, he's been more productive than Bradley Chubb. So there's a potential that his agent's pushing him like, hey, look, we need to go, tell the Steelers, hey, look, you're more productive than this guy. This is what the market is. That's what they got to pay up for. I don't think the Steelers are going to go over like that. Definitely not over that 20 million mark. I would be really surprised if that happened. But he's got some good leverage, man. I mean, edge rushers, they get paid. If he hits the open market, he's going to get a bag.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I like this comment here. I don't think that the Steelers can afford to pay him what he deserves. I think that's huge because I don't think that the Steelers could afford to pay him what he deserves because I think, just like you said, like if he hit the open market, Alex Highsmith is going to get paid, I mean, almost double what he would get paid in Pittsburgh. Because I think that the Steelers are going to look at this and they're going to start somewhere around like 12, maybe 11 million. Spotrac's got his market value at 4 years or $55.6 million, which isn't even $12 million a season. If that's what they're working with, if that's what he ends up getting, he could get 20 plus. Steal. That's a steal. But do you think that's even a possibility? Like, do you think that the Steelers could come to this kid with a hometown offer and he'd take it? Because, I think that he is very successful in Pittsburgh and the grass is not always greener. And Bud Dupree is a good example of that, along with a lot of other players. On top of the Pittsburgh Steelers being a young team with a lot of talent right now, like this is, if you're looking at the life cycle of the NFL, this is a good one to be on. Do you take that over the money? Do you think that's, knowing what we know about Alex Highsmith right now, do you think that's, a real conversation you'd have? Do you think that he'd talk about going to get the bag?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at their cap situation next season, looking at over the cap, $13.5 million under the salary cap for next season. They've got 47 players signed. You've got restructuring options for Fitzpatrick and Watt that could save you, close to 20 million. The first year of his deal is probably going to be the lowest cap hit number, just how NFL contracts are typically structured, especially with the Steelers. Cam Hayward in 2024, assuming, this isn't his last year and he doesn't just up and retire or anything like that. That's also the 2024 is the last year of his deal. So when Highsmith would get expensive is when Hayward would be off the books. So if you really are intent about paying, 3 defensive players big money, you could make those 3 players, Fitzpatrick, Watt, and Highsmith. If you see Highsmith as that type of foundational piece and you really think that he's that important, I definitely think that there's a potential for him to stay. In terms of a hometown discount, man, I think it's impossible to gauge that, because
Yeah.
players have to say the right things publicly. Alex just came out and
Yeah. Yeah.
said, he wants to stay in Pittsburgh, and I have no doubt that he does. I mean, I'm sure you develop relationships. You don't want to up and move your family,
Yep.
things like that. But at the same time, he's in line for a once in a lifetime opportunity. How many people, not just in football, but just in life, are able to, secure generational wealth with your next contract? I mean, this is a big decision, and yeah, 12 to 15 million. There's a big difference between those two numbers. But they're putting their bodies on the line, and you got to really try to maximize your athletic lifespan. And I think that's I can't fault anybody for doing that. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I think that the negotiations will definitely go all the way up until the regular season. I would just personally, I would be really, really surprised if he signed for something less than like right at that 15 million mark
Oh,
before the
okay.
season starts. Because I think he's leaving so much money on the table. And even though I like Alex Highsmith, I think he's a very, very good player, I would be a little bit apprehensive about paying him in that $20 million mark. I think that if he has another productive season, like I think he's going to have, provided he's healthy, when he hits the open market next season and the Steelers don't franchise tag him, he's going to get to that $20 million mark with another productive season. So I would be very, very apprehensive about signing some type of 4-year deal for $12 million per year or anything like that. That people are kind of suggesting right now on social media.
No, I agree. And I do want to make it clear that I'm always for players getting the bag every single time. You know what I mean? Like if the decision is to stay with the Steelers and take this much money, or go to free agency and get this much money, go to free agency. Get the bag, man. You deserve it. Just knowing the work that these guys put into it, go get the bag. It's always deserved. Yeah. I agree with you. I think that you look at this entire situation and it's just like, what's the worst case scenario for the Steelers? Is to get a deal done? Is if they don't get a deal done this season, do you think that there's even a possibility they could get a deal done next year? Because at that point, like that line is thin. That ice is as thin as it gets for the Steelers. And that Alex Highsmith's agent is not going to be sitting there going, yeah, we should negotiate with Pittsburgh first and potentially take less money. If you're on the line of free agency, you're going to free agency.
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, of course, you always do have the fallback option of the franchise tag, but the franchise tags, that's a pretty penny, man. And Highsmith would he would kind of have to take his game to a whole different level this season. We saw him take a big jump last year, but he'd have to go up another level to really be considered in that type of tier, in my opinion. But like I said, man, guys that hit the open market, I mean, they get paid more. That's the thing about free agency and really how the NFL works in general. You feel your needs, through free agency. You draft players for talent, and that's kind of the way for to have success at this level. So, teams are going to go into the offseason next year with pass rushing needs. They're going to need guys that can get after the passer and create pressure on quarterbacks. And Highsmith's going to be one of the best available options, if not the best available option. So,
yeah, I agree. Well, unless maybe Chase Young's out there, you never know. You never know. You never know. Would you sign if you were another team? Before we talk about the wide receivers, if you were another team, you're sitting there, you need an edge rusher. Chase Claypool or Chase Young, Alex Highsmith are on the market. They're both going for the same price. Who you signing?
I would take Highsmith right now until I saw Young be healthy. I need to see him, bounce back and stay healthy. I think Young's a really good player, and I actually think that he could potentially have a really big season this year with Washington, because I think he's mostly back. But when I was watching his film, a month or so ago, I did see him kind of holding back a little bit on that knee. So, and usually, it does take a full season of, working out and getting used to, trusting that leg again. So I think Young's a fantastic player. He's one of the best edge rusher prospects I feel like that I've watched in the last, 5, 6, 7 years. But
yes,
it's been unfortunate, that really big injury kind of zapped some of his momentum that he had coming off that really, really productive rookie season of his.
Yeah. So you're going Alex Highsmith as of right
I'm
now.
going Alex Highsmith though.
I like that.
As of
I like
right
that
now.
answer.
As of right now.
I like that answer. All right, let's talk some wide receivers here. Arthur Moats came out with a pretty big prediction about the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver core. He obviously says that Deontay Johnson and George Pickens are going to be wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. But that wide receiver 3, I think many assume, is going to be Allen Robinson at the start of the season. He'll start in the slot. Moats thinks it'll be differently. Quote, we know, and this comes from the Arthur Moats experience with him and Deke. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. We all know 2 of these dudes already, Pickens and Deontay. Calvin's the 3rd. That's how I look at it. Allen Robinson is already like one of these 2. Calvin is different than these 2. I'm talking just personnel-wise, coaching-wise. If I want to call something crazy on a passing situation, I want that Calvin Austin out there without Allen Robinson personally. That's what Mode says. Do you think that, it makes some sense. You know, you're looking at who George Pickens is. You're looking at who Deontay Johnson is. I don't think you could match Calvin Austin with anybody. I don't think you could compare Calvin Austin to anybody on an NFL field and say, oh, this is pretty much the same guy as that. So he does bring that different level of play. Do you think that there's some ground behind that? You think there's a possibility Calvin Austin finds his way into that starting slot role over Allen Robinson?
Man, I would be kind of surprised if that's how it played out week 1. I mean, if we're talking about is Calvin Austin going to outsnap Allen Robinson, I personally would be surprised about that. And just for a couple of reasons, I do see where Moats, I didn't watch the video, but I see where he could potentially be coming from, right? You get the, you get the speed element with Austin. You know, Austin's a completely different skill set type. You know, he's that hyper elusive, agile speedster, really small build, good after the catch. And then you've got Robinson, who's, more of a bigger body possession, kind of high point threat. Veteran savvy route runner, things like that. So I think that those guys are completely different. And I see what he's coming from in terms of, the Steelers didn't create a lot of explosive plays on offense last year. So getting Calvin Austin in the mix, because he has the speed and that breakaway potential to just literally get in the lineup and pop a big play as soon as he touches the ball. But I don't think that that's going to play out in terms of if he's going to outsnap Allen Robinson. I could be wrong. Yeah. Maybe Calvin is healthy through, preseason and training camp. And he's it happens like every year. I feel like you get a player in the summer who almost forces the team to play them. Jalen Warren was like this last year. He was so good. He went from being, not thought of at all to a relatively big part of the Steelers offense as the running back too. Maybe Calvin does that. I would be kind of surprised if he outsnapped Allen Robinson early on.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it fits well, but I think that the Steelers offense isn't going to be like a snap-based anything. Deontay Johnson and George Pickens will obviously take more snaps than most people, but I think the rest of that group, if it's Allen Robinson, Calvin Austin, I would imagine Pat Freiermuth and Connor Hayward work their way in there as well. Maybe some Jalen Warren. I think all that's just going to be a blend. It'll be a who's the best option right now. Who could we use in this play? Who could we use in that play? The Steelers are not a home run hitting type of team right now. And until proven otherwise, I'm not going to look at them as a team that's throwing the ball 60 yards down the field. Calvin Austin is going to work well within the mix. Allen Robinson is going to work well within the mix. There's a lot of people talking about the veteran presence. I think that helps as well. But I think that Deontay at this point is a veteran. He's a leader of that room. That's not going to change. But I do think that Allen Robinson does help that just consistent catch situation. You know what I mean? Like that's a very reliable pair of hands for Kenny Pickett to have. But do I think that, week 1, I think I'm with you. Like, you're looking at Allen Robinson just because Allen Robinson came in here as a starter. And unless he loses that job, you know what I mean? Calvin Austin's not going to take it away from him. Do you think there's a point where that change? I feel like at some point that does change, that hand will change to Calvin, if not this season, next season. Do you think that that's, in motion for mid-season, late in the season, to where the offense will evolve more to there?
I mean, it could potentially come to that. I think it's all about what A-Rob has left in the tank. I think just based on the little bit of, tape that I watched last year, I watched probably 3 to 4 full games. I think that Robinson has lost a step but his game really isn't predicated on speed. And I actually think a move to the slot for him, maybe even full time, is a good thing at this point of his career. He can really help you. There's one play in particular that I keep coming back to from last season that I saw, but Robinson is running. He's on the left side of the field, and he's running what the Shanahan-McVay offense calls a swirl route, which is a 7-stop, and the defense is in cover 3. Robinson, runs, his 7-stop, and the defender's right in front of him, and they're playing zone coverage, and he has the veteran savvy to shift away from the coverage and make himself available for Matt Stafford. And I think that that's like the big key, especially if you're working in the slot. You have to be able to read multiple defenders. You have to be able to get yourself open and find that void in the coverage. And not saying that Calvin can't do that. It's just being an NFL receiver for however many years A-Rod's been in the league and playing at that high level where he was a number one guy. He understands how to make himself quarterback friendly. And that was the thing that I kept coming back to with Robinson's tape. Excellent with the ball in the air. He's always had fantastic hands. He's a detailed route runner, understands how to read multiple defenders in zone coverage. So, like I said, I think that Austin would have to prove that he can do some of those same things, at least at a comparable level, while also adding that speed element in order to, kind of overtake him. Now, next year is a completely different thing. A-Rob, I don't think he's on this team next year just because of his cap hit is just enormous. They would have to really work out some magic on the cap situation. But I think that Calvin can play a good part in this offense. I just don't know that he's going to be the guy that's going to go out there and play 80% of the snaps. I would personally be surprised if that happened.
No, I agree. And I like your point there about how Allen Robinson is, just like I said, a reliable, a veteran presence for Kenny Pickett, which is huge. That's the most important thing this offseason for anything with the Pittsburgh Steelers is to protect Kenny Pickett at all costs in his succession. And Allen Robinson plays a big role in that. I like that. And you think, at this point, Austin's, like I said, he's going to be involved. Everybody's going to be involved. I want to get to some questions here. Calvin Austin as a kick punt returner. We'll start with that one. You think that's a lock at this point? First off, do you think that the Steelers are gonna, no matter, let's put an over/under on it. Starting lineup, preseason games, 3 of them, kick returns by the number 1 kick and punt returner, or I guess kick returner on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Over/under amount of returns, 3. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's gonna be weird with the rule changes, right? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really sure how important that's going to be. I'm interested to see how that plays out. I do think that Calvin is going to have he's going to be given every chance to win the kick returner and punt returner jobs. In terms of kick returns, I believe that he's definitely going to win that job. Calvin only returned, I think it was 20, 25 or 28, 29 kicks in college, but he took 2 of them to the house. So per Pro Football Focus, he also muffed a couple. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Like we talked about last year with Gunner. I mean, everyone was really excited about him returning kicks, and then he goes and muffs a couple, and then Calvin was like, "Yep, you're on the bench." That's the one way to lose your job as a special teamer. You can't turn the ball over. So I definitely think Austin has the explosiveness to do it. In training camp and stuff, he's definitely going to have every opportunity to win that job. I don't think any of us really are too enthusiastic about putting Gunner back there. So I think that's
who do you think would be the backup? Who do you think would be the real? Because I don't think Gunner's going to make this roster. Who do you think would be?
I know they're going to give
McFarland.
Well, I know that Jordan Byrd will get a chance.
Oh, Jordan Byrd will have an opportunity.
McFarland will be in the kick return mix. I'm not sure about returning punts.
Yeah, me too. I agree with that one. Jordan Byrd's a good one. That's a sleeper right there. That's a sleeper.
Jordan can move.
He's shifty. Really move. He's working with Calvin Austin, which I think is huge. I like Jordan. I think he's good. He was rather quiet at the end of minicamp, but I think that starts at training camp. You know what I mean? Like you put pads on, and it's no longer just like wrap up, and you see how shifty he could possibly be. I think that's when that's a good one. That's a good one. Jordan Byrd. He'd have to beat out Miles Boykin, Gunner, Des Fitzpatrick, maybe just to earn that final. Wide receiver.
It's tough to make the roster, man, as a specialist only, and that's basically what Jordan would be doing. But I think like we say, every summer we see that one guy just come out of nowhere and, force the Steelers to keep him or to play him. And,
Yep.
Jordan's going to have the opportunity to do that. He's definitely going to get a lot of work on special teams.
Yeah, no doubt. Steven Sims did it last year. He was not a player that was going to make this roster. Played a big part in that roster by the end of the season. All right, let's answer a quick question here before we move on to some linebacker talk. How well do you think the O-line is going to protect Kenny Pickett? What's your expectations as of this point for good old front five in front of KP8?
I think the Steelers offensive line will be a slightly above average unit league wide. I think, which is definitely a significant step up from where it's been in years past. So
yeah,
I'm excited about that, particularly interior, man. I think that the interior is really solid. Really like Daniels, really like Sam Allo. Both of those guys were on my top 10 list. Between both of them, they allowed 1 sack last year. So that's pretty good stuff right there. I think both of those guys are functional in pass protection. The only thing is, Sam Allo just has to stay healthy. He's had some issues staying healthy over the course of his career, but if he's healthy in the lineup, they're really, really good at guard. Mason Cole was okay in pass protection. I do think that he has some limitations, but he's solid. I think the big thing is just not having that huge black hole of a void for defensive coordinators to just attack over and over and over, which is basically what they did to Kendrick Green 2 years ago.
Yes.
And Cole's not going to do that. And I'm excited to see, how well Cole plays this upcoming season if he's actually fully healthy, because I know he was battling some injuries last year. Chooks is what he is. He's a good athlete, gets out of his stance quick. He's a good solid pass protector. He just gives you nothing in the run game. Left tackle is obviously going to be the one to watch. I think that Broderick Jones is going to be the guy sooner rather than later. I do think that Broderick's going to have some growing pains, though, at least early on.
Do you think that they're okay? How do you view the line if Dan Moore starts? You feel that's because I remember last year, maybe 2 years ago, me and you had the conversation where, wow, we've been doing this show a long time, but me and you have had the conversation of Dan Moore could be the 5th best offensive lineman on your team. And at some point you need a 5th best offensive lineman. So how do you feel about that?
It's really tough. I think that Moore is he's a nice swing tackle option that you would feel comfortable with, if he had to step in due to injuries or something like that. But I think that he's a very, very low tier starting option just at this point of his career, just because I still think that he's got some struggles with his anchor that I'm not sure are ever going to really be completely fixed. And what I mean by that is, Moore's hand placement can sometimes get him in trouble. It's actually similar to Broderick. But the difference between those two guys is Dan can have his hands wide and let somebody get into his chest, and the rep's over. He loses.
Yeah.
If he's not perfect with his hands, he loses. Broderick is different because Broderick can have his hands wide and still recover because he's so freaking strong and he's so athletic. So there's a difference there. Recovery ability at every position is huge at the NFL level because you're not always going to be able to be technically sound, technically savvy, and win every rep. Just picture perfect. It's not how it works. So you have to be able to recover. Broderick has a lot of hand stuff and a lot of technical refinement that he needs to work on. But he's so athletic that he's still going to get away with some stuff. Not nearly as much as he got away with in college, but he will, over the course of time, you'll see that kind of really flash.
All right. I like that. This is another one here. Does Hakeem Butler make the roster? We didn't even mention him when talking about Jordan Byrd.
Man, that one's tough.
I mean, you have your wide receiver overview dropping this weekend. You got him in the fighting for a roster spot over.
Yeah, that was tough, man. I think, just at the end of the roster, you're always talking about special teams impact. Is Hakeem going to be able to impact the game on special teams? Because, we've already got locks in terms of Pickens and Johnson, and Calvin and Deontay, excuse me.
Yeah.
But those top 3 are locks. And then, you get into, I think, the Calvin Austins of the world, the Miles Boykins.
Yep.
Those guys are probably pushing for playing time. They have a better path to the roster because of their special teams value, too. Boykin's a really excellent gunner. Austin's probably going to be the return man for the Steelers. Is Butler going to be able to push for a roster spot if he doesn't contribute in special teams? He would have to be really, really good at wide receiver this
crazy
summer in
good
order
at
to
wide
do that.
receiver. Yeah, I agree. I think that his best path is to beat out Miles Boykin and to show that he could be a gunner as well. But just like you said, like Miles Boykin might have been the Steelers' best special teams guy last year, so that's going to be that's a tall task to come in here and try and beat him out, even if he's a fan favorite. You know, like the end of the roster spot guys, they are not fan favorites. They're just really good special teamers, and that's who Miles Boykin is. So it's going to be, I think it's a lot tougher for Hakeem Butler to make this roster than maybe he's being talked about or maybe people want to view it as, but it's going to be a challenge. But if it does happen, I mean, it's well deserved, and the guy is ginormous. So
injuries happen too. You know,
injuries
I mean, obviously
happen.
we don't want that to happen, but they do happen.
No.
So injuries, not just for the Steelers, but they'll happen league wide. There'll be positions open. I mean, if Hakeem goes out there and he plays really well,
yeah,
and shows out, even if it's just on offense, he'll find a home on a practice squad at least.
Yeah, or
somewhere.
in Pittsburgh's practice squad.
Yeah. It's just gonna be tough if he doesn't. Like, he's gonna have to be borderline dominant in the summer against these backups in order to really convince them to keep him. And even if he does make it, say they keep 6 guys and he's the 6th guy, or if the 5th technically receiver, Boykin would get the helmet over him on game day because of his special teams value. So he might not even be active on game days. He'd be a nice player to have. I'm excited about seeing what Butler looks like because we really haven't seen very much of him. I mean, hasn't played very much ball. So I'm excited to see what he looks like. I liked watching Butler in college, so I'm rooting for him.
I am as well. I'm excited to see him at training camp. I think that's when we saw a glimpse of him. He made a big play one day over Corey Trice on the sideline during minicamp. But that's, again, a guy like that who's going to be physical in the air, you got to put some pads on and see if it's consistent every single day at training camp, and fans will get a good look at that once we hit Latrobe. All right, last thing I want to talk about here. There's been a linebacker that's been talked about all week long as a fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers since the Pittsburgh Maulers lost to the Birmingham Stallions in the USFL championship game. That inside linebacker is Reuben Foster. I just want to say this. Look, I am. I like to brag a lot, especially on this show. I put out this Steelers should consider signing Reuben Foster piece like 3 weeks ago. Nobody read it. Nobody cared at all. I got it. I was on vacation. So it was just like here having a moment, drinking a pina colada, decided to, write an article about Reuben Foster. Now it's the Steelers are signing Reuben Foster. It's a must. And I'm like, well, thank you. I said this weeks ago. I have to say that I came on Monday, talked to Steven. All I watched was the USFL championship game, a little bit of Reuben Foster, like highlights throughout the year before or when I read that article. I didn't really know if he still had the athleticism that he had coming out of college, because his first year in the NFL and his second year in the NFL, the first year was decent. Second year was rough, and it just seemed to just lose it after that one. I went back and watched a lot of Reuben Foster USFL film, as much as I could possibly find over the last week. And the dude's definitely still got it when it comes to athleticism. And I think he might fit what the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking for. How do you feel about it?
Man, I can't comment too much on USFL stuff because I try to keep my football viewings at least towards the NFL in college. But I remember watching Foster coming out of Alabama, and he was unbelievable. He was literally, I don't know. I talk about how bad I think the inside linebacker grouping is in the NFL. I actually think it's the worst position group NFL wide. I think it's terrible.
I thought you were saying the Steelers inside linebackers is the worst.
No, just group NFL wide. I think the absolute worst position group is off-ball linebackers, but there's just not very many good players at that position. But I remember Foster coming out, and he's still one of the best players I've ever seen at that spot. I mean, he was just incredible, man. He was so good against the run. He was so athletic. He was violent. He could take on blocks. He could stack and shed consistently in the backfield. I mean, he was awesome. It was never about talent with Reuben Foster. I mean, I've seen some of the clips floating around on Twitter, and hey, he definitely looks like he's still got some pop in his pads, but it's never really been about talent with Foster. It's just about all the other stuff. Can you keep him on the field? Can you keep him focused and all that stuff? So I'm rooting for him. I mean, I think a second chance. If he gets that, he might be able to make the most of it. But I don't know. I think it's just more about, I definitely believe that Foster can still play. I don't even really need to see much more than what I've seen to believe that.
Yeah, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're taking. I mean, a lot of people talk about like, oh, his past. I agree with all that. Like, there's obviously some red flags that come with this, but at this point in the season, like, it's not like Reuben Foster's signing like a $3 million deal. He's coming to Pittsburgh on a vet minimum. This is a tryout. You are not guaranteed a single thing whatsoever for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, we're looking at a high risk zero or a high zero risk, high reward signing, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about just like a training camp invite or something like that, I
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
don't. Yeah, I don't have
There's
any
no way
issues
you
with
can't
that.
sign this guy to like a guaranteed you're on the roster. You know, like he's in the same boat as Akeem Butler and Luke Barku to just come in here, try out, see what. I think that's how all the USFL guys are going to be, you know, except for Chris Blewett should be on. I know that you don't watch the USFL, but my man Chris Blewett, okay, Pitt kicker, Pittsburgh Maulers kicker, probably the best kicker the football whatever has seen in so long, and still hasn't gotten any camp invite, any signing, nothing. He should be a guaranteed lock to some roster somewhere. I don't care what it is. Man was unstoppable in the USFL.
Yeah.
But anybody who comes in deserve, you know, they're a camp invite. It's, you know, it's no big deal. And the fit's there. So I think if you're going to take a chance on like Nick Kwiatkowski, take a chance on Reuben. And on top of that, like, you bring 7 guys usually to training camp at inside linebacker. Cole Holcomb's already going to be like a half of a player because he's dealing with he's still coming over the foot injury. So they're going to be slow with him. You need guys. Like, you can't walk in there with 5 inside linebackers and say, okay, guys, go compete for 5 spots. Have fun. You know, it just doesn't work out like that one. What about this one real quick? Kareem Hunt. I haven't even seen this.
I haven't either, but I think Kareem Hunt's probably washed, guys. I don't think y'all need to worry too much about that. I mean, I thought Kareem Hunt was pretty bad last year in what I watched, so I don't think y'all really want Kareem Hunt, if I'm being honest.
Here it is. Steelers urged to sign NFL rushing champion Kareem Hunt. And that's the only thing I've seen. I would say that maybe the rumors are true that maybe he does want to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are the Pittsburgh Steelers going to sign him? No. And I just think that's I
don't think you need Kareem Hunt, man, to be honest. I think the Steelers are pretty set with Harrison Warren being the 1-2. I could see them signing a veteran as the RB3, you know, if McFarland or, you know, any of these other guys don't really impress in the preseason. But I think they'll probably get the opportunity to do so, because there's always veteran running backs that end up hitting the market kind of late as you go into the regular season. So I think
at this point, the running back market is you're going to get everybody, you know, at some point. Like, there's nobody sticking. Like, it's a running back. You could just sign any of them
for all pros.
$5 for anybody. They're literally dollar menu players at this point, which is sad and ridiculous, but it is what it is. I like Anthony McFarland. You think if you had to make a bold prediction, do you have a bold prediction for the running backs? Try to focus this. You think Alfonso Graham's got a real shot? You think Darius Hagen's got a real shot? Or you think this is an Anthony McFarland?
I mean, I think they got a shot. I mean, I think that, you know, McFarland's been here a while, so his familiarity within the scheme and the system definitely is good. They know what type of player he is. They've kept him around, at least in a practice squad, you know, version for a little bit now. So he has the upper hand, but I think that we can all probably agree that McFarland hasn't necessarily seized the limited opportunities that he's had. Although I did go back and watch the little bit that we saw of him last year, you know, in the preseason, and then in that Colts game, I thought he performed pretty well. So, but you know, he's definitely not a lock for that spot, man. Graham's going to push him. Higgins is going to push him. I think it's relatively open, but I think McFarland has the upper hand, you know, entering training camp. We'll see, though.
Yeah, I agree. I like Anthony McFarland, man. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's turned into what I hoped he would, but
yeah,
I like it. Like, he's just got such a good skill set, you know? Like, if
he looked better. I put out a video on my channel like a week or two ago, and he did look better than I had ever seen him look, at least in a Steelers uniform in that Colts game and the Jags game in the preseason. There's a fine balance at running back between decisiveness and patience. And I thought that when he got the rock, he was balanced. And I was impressed by that, because one of the things that I've hated about McFarland when I watched him his first 2 seasons with the Steelers is I know he's incredibly fast, but he didn't play that way because his vision was really spotty, and he just never seemed like extremely confident in himself.
Oh yeah.
So I think that last year, that was a little bit different, and I'm excited to see how he looks this summer.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the vision was we'll say off. Spotty. Spotty would be a nicer word from what it was. But he did come in very raw. I think he's developed nicely. Again, I don't think anything's a lock, but I'm a big Anthony McFarland guy. Been a big Anthony McFarland guy. We'll end with this one here. What about Ezekiel Elliott?
I will say this. The only thing I'll say about Zeke is someone needs to sign him because he still has value as a short yardage back, and he's really good in pass protection. He's always been one of the better
Dude,
pass
he scored
running backs.
15 touchdowns last season. 15 touchdowns. You could find something for him to do for 15 touchdowns.
Yeah, the Steelers not really the team that I would be pushing to sign him, but there definitely needs to be he can definitely go somewhere. He's still got some skills, even though he's definitely lost probably a step and a half from where he was at Ohio State. But that's just what happens, man. Running backs, they just don't last very long. Zeke was a really good player when he came into the league, but once you get past that 12 to 1600 touch mark, it's pretty much over, unfortunately.
It's over. It's done right there. I was golfing with somebody yesterday. Like I was golfing by myself. They were golfing by them. We teamed up. He was from Texas. He's a Dallas Cowboys fan, and this guy had nothing good to say about Zeke whatsoever.
Cowboys fans, they like Pollard, man. That's one thing I've gathered.
He was just like, man, he's been slow for years. They should have never signed him. He's terrible at this. He's terrible. I was just like, wow, man, Zeke must stink. He must be terrible. I didn't know. But the guy was also a huge Dak Prescott fan.
That's the problem. That's the problem, I feel like, with football conversation is you're either the greatest thing to ever walk a football field or you're absolutely awful. I mean, there's no in between. There's no context. There's no nuance. It's just that's one thing that just absolutely bugs me about Twitter, man. I hate it. That just everybody's got to be so extreme on one way or another. And
the golf course.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Well, I mean, like I said, Zeke, go ahead.
Are you on Threads?
I'm not on Threads. No, y'all not gonna catch me on Threads, man. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I don't know how much more social media y'all are gonna get out of me.
Twitter drops, we're done. It's over. Catch us everything on All Steelers Talk and
I mean, if Twitter drops, like for real drops, I mean, I guess I may try to go somewhere else, but I don't know. I don't really spend nearly as much time on social media these days. I guess just because I'm so busy working, but
it's good for you. I don't know. Man. I'm excited for it. I'm happy for you. But what were you saying about Zeke before we head out of here?
No, I just think in general, like it's just what I was talking about. It's got to be one way or another. You're either great or you're terrible. And Zeke definitely has his flaws. I mean, there is no burst left in those legs, but there's still value in, keeping a quarterback upright, and there's still value in, punching stuff in at the goal line. So I'm not saying you go give him $5 million or something like that next year, but if he wants to play for $5
million,
I mean, if he wants to go play for a couple million and back up and maybe mentor a young running back or something like that, I think that would be a good thing for him.
Yeah, I agree. I like Zeke. The guy on the golf course did not. The guys in the comments do not. So we might be the only two Zeke supporters left on the planet.
One of the funny things I do see on social media though is every offseason Zeke does these like workout videos. And and the comments are always, or the titles are always, Zeke's looking leaner and faster. And I'm like, bro, he looks the same every year, except he loses a third of a step. And you guys say Ben. This.
It's like the Ben every offseason. Yeah, Ben's in the best shape of his life. It's like, dude, he looks exactly the same as
everyone's always in the best shape of their life.
I know. Kenny Pickett was fat. Najee Harris's quads were the size of watermelons. It's every year, man. It's all about them angles. It's all about that. I'm gonna start dropping. I think we should start dropping All Steelers Talk pictures every single year at the beginning, like right in the beginning of May. We'll drop progress reports.
Yeah.
I'll be like, man, dude, they're looking good. Look at best shape of our lives over here. Let me tell you, easy.
We gotta do that.
All right. With that, we're heading out of here, guys. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk, or check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. Like this video and find all of mine and Derek's work at allsteelers.com. Derek's got a wide receiver overview dropping this weekend on top of 4 reasons that the Steelers defense might not work out that dropped this morning. Go check both of those guys out. I will be back on Monday with Steven. Enjoy a beautiful weekend in the Berg.